hey, I hear you want to take your face-to-face TA sections and put them online. Well, guess what? I'm here to help you. All right, sorry, this is like take 35, so I'm like losing my mind here. Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Madeline St. Marie, for those of you that don't know me. I'm a 6th year PhD candidate in the ancient Mediterranean. Michelle, if you're watching this, I am writing, I promise. And although I'm on leave currently, I've spent a lot of my time at UCR working in online modalities, helping, I guess they're Excite now, helping them think of tools for online courses. And so I wanted to help out my lovely department of graduate students because honestly, the best part about being at UCR was my colleagues. So this is for y'all. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety about going from face-to-face to online. And what I would like to do is publish a series of videos to help you feel at least a little bit more confident about going from what you're used to something that might seem very new and scary. And at the very least, I want to assure you that everybody is freaking out, okay? Your students, the professors, the university, you are not alone in this. You will get through this. Just remember, this is not business as usual, okay? This is triage education, and what that means is that you are not, most likely, going to be able to deliver the most amazing, educationally innovative section online. Online education actually takes a lot of forethought. It takes a lot of planning. It's not something you can do on the fly within 2 weeks. So please be kind to yourself. Start thinking about what you want the students to take away from your sections and how you can help them get there. It will not be the same, so don't assume it's going to be the same, okay? Be kind to yourself. All right. Well, what I would like to do over the next couple videos is explain how to Zoom, explain why making your expectations explicit is the best thing you can do for yourself and for your students, and also to explain some tips and tricks that I have learned over the last couple of years teaching online that will help you make the most of your experience as a de facto online TA. You can always reach out to me with your questions. You can also reach out to Kat Boniface and John Haberstroh. They'll be able to get in touch with me. And if I mispronounce anything, I'm sorry. My anxiety disorder is like right now with this whole crisis issue because Denver is actually hit pretty bad right now. So before we get started on the kind of nitty-gritty of how to take your classes online, I would like to discuss the key differences that I have discovered between face-to-face and online education. First of all, you can never port something from face-to-face to online 100% of the time. Anyone who's had to take a foreign language, I think that's most of us, we know that translation is not a one-to-one gig, right? You can't just take something and have a one-to-one translation into something else and have it make sense. You have to squeeze it, you have to massage it, you have to think about your knowledge of the language, of connotation and denotation and what makes the most sense. Well, that's the same thing in online education, right? There's things that work in face-to-face education that just do not work in online. And the same goes the other way too. There's stuff that we can do online that don't really work that well in face-to-face. And it's our job to think about this before we get into the midst of teaching so that we feel much more stable and much more calm about what we're about to do. So, 3 big differences that you're going to encounter and that I would like you to start thinking about now between face-to-face teaching and online teaching. So, big difference number 1, and this is where expectations come in handy and are completely necessary for this endeavor. Your students have not been conditioned for online education. Now, I say the word conditioned because your students have been conditioned to recognize what a classroom looks like, how a classroom functions, what they should do in a classroom, right? Not to get too theoretical on you, but the classroom, like any other culturally and socially created space, has rules and assumptions built into it that we may have not made explicit in like the past 10 years. Now, I can see this happening in real time because I currently teach middle school, okay? Pour one out for me, please. in middle school and in high school, teachers really emphasize how students come into classrooms, how they behave in classrooms. And a lot of it has to do with coming in silently and waiting for instruction. You've actually seen this before because I am sure that you've been pumped to teach in your discussion section. You have these amazing questions. You've curated the most wonderful group of primary and secondary sources for them, only to get into the classroom, ask a question, and be greeted with students looking at you like this. Right? Surely it can't just be me, right? Students have been conditioned to really be passive receptacles of knowledge instead of active participants who critically think and critically communicate. And a lot of this has to do with K through 12 education, but that's another rant for another time. Okay? So your students, they know how to be in a classroom. They know how to come in, they know how to sit down, they know how to not talk when you're talking for the most part. And they know where the knowledge is coming from. But online, all bets are off. So what I want you to do is to think about what things you want to make explicit to your students that they might not be aware of, or assumptions that we may hold about educational space, even if it is digital or virtual, that may not be made explicit to our students. Okay, so that's difference number one. Students are not conditioned for online. All right. The second difference is that as it is a digital or virtual space, there's no physical affect. So, for example, I like to work the room. I like to go to the right, I like to go to the left, I move forward, I move back. It's a very exciting experience to see me teach, okay? If I do say so myself. But one of the nice things about this is if students are talking, or if I want to get a student's attention, I can easily just move into their space, casually. I don't need to be like, hey, Elise, why are you talking? Like, I don't need to do that. Shout out to Elise, what's up, girl? I don't need to dunk on them. I can just use my own physical presence to get students to pay attention and to kind of keep their attention, right? I can't do that anymore because my classroom is now this little square that you see here. If I move too far to the right, I'm off the screen. If I move too far to the left, I'm off the screen, which is flipped for y'all. If I stand up, you're going to see this lovely image of my midsection, right? I'm now limited to this, and you'll see me actually gesticulate a lot with things on my desk to try and make up for that. But you need to start thinking about how you can treat this camera or this little limited space as your stage for teaching. And that's something we'll go over in a second video as well. So, students that have not been conditioned for online, you're now lacking physical affect, so how are you going to keep students' attention, right? The third thing, and something that I think is really the most obvious about not being able to take your face-to-face interactions and just plug them into a digital space, is that there's limited functionality. There's things that you can do in Zoom which are awesome, and I wish that we could do in a face-to-face class, but they can't do everything, right? One of the biggest kind of holes that I would say that exist in Zoom and in other conferencing software is that, for example, playing videos for everyone is really difficult to do. A lot of this has to do with hardware specifications, the fact that Zoom only captures video at about 30 frames per second, and we're used to 60 frames per second, or 144 frames per second if you're a gamer. But the 30 frames per second makes it very difficult, for example, to watch a video, okay? So if you use a lot of videos in your teaching, you're going to have to start thinking about how you want your students to do that and consume that media before they get into the digital space, or maybe have them do it on their own during or afterwards. These are the sort of questions you're going to have to start thinking about your materials and how you're going to convey them online, okay? So, students are not conditioned for online spaces. Your physical affect and how you're going to kind of entice students to engage is limited. And the things that you used to do in your physical classroom, they might not work on Zoom or online, okay? So hopefully what we're going to do is we're going to take you from this good old 1401, or this, something that looks like the university lecture hall, right? Or this, which looks like where I went to undergrad a billion years ago, to this, the good old Zoom room, okay? So over the next couple videos, I'm going to give you as much of my knowledge as possible in order to make you feel successful to make this transition in this time of crisis. Because remember, this is not business as usual, Okay? All right. Until next time.